participating in the flotilla, and of course it's in line with the Israeli propaganda, which is to say that they would do whatever they could. And actually, in the aftermath of the sabotage, the Deputy Prime Minister in Israel said that those problems the flotilla is having in realising their plans didn't just happen. They are thanks to the work of the political echelon, whose focus was on diplomatic political issues and operational work of the Israeli Defence Forces to prepare for every possible eventuality. So to a certain audience at home, I think they're actually bragging about having engaged in these actions that endangers the lives of European citizens and others, so it's extremely important. The second act, and maybe I'll leave it mostly to my Greek colleague to deal with, is the question of the obvious massive pressure put on the Greek government, and the Greek government now acting in collaboration with the Israeli state to extend the blockade of Gaza now beyond just the waters surrounding Gaza, but it actually extends right into the Mediterranean now and right to the ports of Greece. It's, in my opinion, an outrageous act by the Greek government to be collaborating in this fashion with the Israeli state, the Israeli Defence Forces. It gives a tiny glimpse of the kind of oppression that's suffered by the people in Gaza. The ongoing detention of the captain of the US ship and a number of participants in the Canadian ship has to be condemned. I think those who are in favour of democratic rights, human rights, should demand the release of those people who are simply trying to participate in the flotilla. The last point is, why is it the case that the Greek government caved into this pressure? I think there's a number of indications come out in the last number of days that gives a picture of how that has come about, which is massive pressure from the Israeli establishment, but also economic pressure and threats to a potential gas pipeline from Israel to Greece, as well as pressure, I'd say, from the US establishment, given the position of Greece economically, its dependence upon, or what its government would consider to be its dependence upon the IMF, the bailouts, etc. So I maybe leave it at that. Ask Nikos to speak about some of the issues relating to Greece, and then definitely have time for people to ask questions about the flotilla, about what's going to happen now, etc. Thanks.
I'd also thank you for having turned up to this press conference. As my colleague has just said, I think you're all aware of what's happened. I would simply like to refer to the problems which stem from this outrageous behaviour by the Greek government. Basically, it should have stood on the side of international justice, not simply because that's a tradition in Greece, but also because whatever problems Greece has in more general terms externally, it always demands that international law should be applied, and quite rightly so. And so this absolutely outrageous ban on the sailing of vessels from Greek ports with Greek flags towards Gaza, for the reasons which have been said and which have been explained, that is a huge problem in terms of the stance adopted by the Greek government. And it shows also that the change of strategy on the part of the Greek government in the face of general policy, instead of pointing the finger at the Israeli government and the Israeli state, which is always trampling international law, and we've heard that they're setting up new illegal settlements on Palestinian land, and they're talking about setting up a new constitution for the state of Israel, which will ban mixed marriages between Israeli and Palestinian citizens. This thing is going on. It's a completely unacceptable policy from the part of Israel. But despite that, unfortunately, the Greek government has bowed to their orders rather than supporting the movement for solidarity with the people of Palestine. And that's why we had this illegal ban, this illegal decision from the Greek government to ban this flotilla. It's not supported anywhere under international legislation, under EU legislation. Nothing supports that possibility. We also saw that the American captain was arrested, one of these captains who was going to set out for Gaza. And then after that, the Canadian vessel was blocked as well. And now I've heard today that on this vessel, the Greek one, where there was a sabotage mentioned by my colleague Murphy, which meant that it wasn't able to sail. It was taken to the shipyards, it was mended, it was repaired. Technically speaking, it's perfectly ready to sail. It's been checked. But unfortunately, the Greek government today has banned it from leaving, not to Gaza, but from the port where the repairs took place, to another port 10 nautical miles away in the area of Attica. And I'm sorry, this is completely unacceptable. It exceeds any possible boundary of respect, if you like, also for our own national domestic law in Greece, you know, to ban this vessel from sailing. I'm not saying this, the European left's not saying this. Pretty much all the parties have actually condemned the stance which has been adopted by the Greek government, which, okay, it may be due to a series of different pressures, but the Greek government apparently is wanting to show what was said a few months ago by the president of the Eurogroup. Well, he said this in terms of the crisis and the economic measures. He was saying that, you know, Greece is becoming a country with diminished sovereignty. And this goes beyond the question of solidarity of the Palestinian people. We're talking also of the question of the situation of the Greek state and the Greek people. But the point I would finally like to make is that this stance which has been adopted by the Greek government, this unacceptable, unprecedented state that we're speaking out, the stance which we've speaking out against, I think is undermining this whole movement of solidarity for the Palestinians. There are new forces coming out showing goodwill, but they're speaking out against the embargo on Gaza, and they're speaking out and condemning the sort of situation that the Palestinians are living in. And somehow this has to come to an end as well. And despite the position adopted by the Greek government in taking up this stance, we are sure that this movement of solidarity with the people of Palestine will change the situation. You know, despite political, ideological differences, for many reasons, historic reasons and others, the vast majority of people in Greece support the struggle of the Palestinian people to have their own state and to have their right respected. And that's why it's so important for us that we really, in every possible way, crank up the solidarity which we show for them. Steps have been taken here in the Parliament as well. They've been taken within all of the international organisations. And the European Union, we feel, needs to make its voice heard in support of international law and in support of the rights of the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikos Kontis. I'd like to remind you that the letter that the three members have sent to Barroso is signed by Murphy, Vilivara, and Nicole Nielsen from the Greens. If you have anything to add, it's your moment now. Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for Paul, just about, more specifically about the sabotage. I assume you're going to follow up on this, are you? And how do you plan on getting proof that it was the IDF or the Israel government that was behind it? Because I've read all your blog, your description about it, and listening to you now. But how do you plan on following up on this? Thanks.
Yeah, I think we'll be quite lucky if we get definitive proof that it was the Israeli Defence Forces. You know, this is something that happened undersea by a diver, most likely with either a small explosive charge or a very sharp instrument. What we are calling for, and there is an international campaign for the idea of a genuinely independent, impartial inquiry into this that would involve marine engineers to investigate this. I'm not confident that, you know, that the Israeli state is going to admit to it or that we're going to find fingerprints on the propeller shaft. So I think the circumstantial evidence is very strong. I think that call for an independent investigation is very important. But the other thing that I think is important is that if the Israeli state denies it, which they've been a bit, they're saying a number of things about that. Sometimes they say they deny it, sometimes they refuse to deny it. But if they actually did deny it, then I'd call on them to condemn it. And that would be a way of distancing themselves from it. But I think that's very unlikely to happen.
Avant de vous donner encore la parole, je voudrais...
Before giving you the floor again, I'd like to give the floor to Marie-Christine Verguer, who has joined us and who has been in favour of the flotilla very, very strongly in France. Well, initially, the flotilla was to leave from Marseille, and I'm in the southeast of France, and therefore I felt more closely involved. I supported the flotilla right from the start. And when we saw that the boats couldn't leave France, the French boats had to go to Athens. I imagine that you've already covered a certain number of things. It's true that yesterday afternoon, in fact yesterday evening in the chamber, I expressed... I'm sorry. I've been involved in a difficult negotiation on Schengen, and I've got to focus my mind now. But I did express my anger yesterday with regard to what has happened over the flotilla, the threats that have been made and the pressure that has been brought to bear by the Israeli government on the members of the union, and the sabotage too of a certain number of boats that you've been informed of. The arrest of the captain of the American ship. These are a number of things which mean that these pacifist militants are treated like criminals and have had to cede to Israel. So I was particularly angry as a campaign that has been waged in France. There are 400 of us who've signed a support petition of the flotilla involving 400 people from all political groups, and we've been dragged through the mud. We've been described as a collaborator and compared with people who denounced Jews during the war. Now, I think that that's really the limit. There are certain boundaries in terms of discussions and agreements, and what I said yesterday apropos of Israel was quite harsh. But I reiterate what I said yesterday. It's not because Israel is Jewish and represents the Jews throughout the world that more and more men and women of Jewish background, Jewish culture, are denouncing what has happened in Israel and Palestine. There is interference coming across, probably due to a mobile phone. Now, it's been a terrible drama, and I believe that if responsibilities had been taken on board at the time, that things could have been avoided. But that's not a reason for having the same language in terms of respect for human rights, and we allow a certain number of things on the part of Israel that we wouldn't allow any other country to indulge in. The Palestinians are murdered each day. They're living in terrible conditions, and that's enough. This blockade is illegal. The ships should be able to get through. If the European authorities were to make sure that Israel respected international law, then the only aim of these boats is to bring in commodities that are absolutely essential to the Palestinians. So it's up to the government to assist them and not to prevent them from getting through. Really, I am anger, and I feel that it is no longer tolerable, that it's hardly surprising that people want to go to the Palestinians to help them because the political authorities are not doing what they should do. It's time that we put an end to this blockade, and it's time for the European Union to take on board its responsibilities and to speak a language of truth with Israel to put an end to this situation.
Derniers 10 minutes sont pour vous.
Last few minutes for you, yes?
Ralf Niemeyer, EU Chronicle, in English if I may. Question to Mr. Murphy and Madame Vergula. In the German Linkspartei there is a huge discussion about participation in the Gaza Flottilla and actually the members of parliament as well as staff of the parliamentarians were banned to participate because it was considered anti-Semitic to criticize the state of Israel. What is your position for that?
Thank you. Firstly, that obviously is a discussion that should take place within Die Linke. They should have a democratic debate with the full involvement of the membership. However, I wouldn't agree with such a position being put in the Socialist Party in Ireland, and I don't agree with the idea that participating in the flotilla or criticising the actions of the State of Israel is equivalent to anti-Semitism. There is a massive propaganda campaign in the Israeli media, which my sister party in Israel have told me about. The flotilla is called the hate flotilla. It says that we're bringing chemical weapons. It says that we're preparing to attack IDF soldiers whenever they come on board. All complete lies, but designed to create a public opinion that could accept the sabotage of the ships, but also potentially another incident like with the Mavai Marmor, whereby they have a direct assault. So I'd say from my point of view, and all the people I know who participate in the flotilla, that the flotilla is not an act aimed against ordinary Israeli Jews or Arabs in the region, that it's aimed at solidarity with ordinary people. It aims at bringing vital aid for the people of Gaza, and in no sense is there any anti-Semitism to it. Maybe.
Oui, je ne me mêlerai pas des débats internes à Die Linke.
No, I won't go into an internal debate, but what I'd like to say is that the European left and the Nordic parties supported the flotilla. And what I said yesterday was to criticise all this mixing up. The rage that I expressed meant that criticising Israel, criticising the Israeli government doesn't mean that we're criticising the Jews. I've got lots of Jewish friends, including people who've embarked in the flotilla, people of Jewish origin. So criticising Israel doesn't mean anti-Semitism. We shouldn't mix everything up. This is perverse, and it's simply intolerable. That's why I've given some examples from the campaign that has been waged in France, because it's simply not acceptable. It's not because Israel, as I said, it's not because Israel is a Jewish state and defends Jews throughout the world, and it's not because one criticizes Israel or the current authorities of Israel if one is engaging in anti-Semitism. I had the same example of Tunisia. I was considered an enemy of Tunisia because for a long time I criticized the Ben Ali regime. And therefore criticizing the Israeli policy is not engaging in anti-Semitism. Well, it's quite simply criticizing the impeding of international law, which is recognized everywhere and within the European Union. Therefore, international law needs to be respected by everybody, including the State of Israel. It's over to you again. If there are no other questions, then I think that we can stop here, unless Marie-Christine, Paul or Nikos want to add anything. Paul? No? Right, well,
Can you hear me, yeah? Yes. Okay, hi. So what now? I mean, as of last week, the you were, I think I read on the wires, the group was hoping to set sail in the coming weeks.
Yes, okay. Well, originally, so the Irish boat was in Göcek in Turkey. Then the Irish boat was sabotaged, is out of action for perhaps a month, so won't be able to participate. It was clear it wouldn't be able to participate in this flotilla. So then 6 of us who were on that boat managed to get to Greece, where we were going to participate in a Dutch-Italian boat, whereby we are now subject to the Greek blockade. I think in the next days there will be a very serious attempt to put pressure on the Greek government to get them to change their position. It's my opinion that's probably unlikely to succeed. I think it's worth pursuing, but probably unlikely to succeed, that probably the Greek government maintains its position. In that case, in my opinion, the Freedom Flotilla 2 comes to an end, in the sense that people don't just stay in Greece forever hoping to go, but that it comes to an end. But that doesn't mean that the concept of Freedom Flotilla has come to an end, or the concept of trying to break the siege. I think this will be clear within the next number of days. And I would say, on my behalf, and probably on behalf of all the people who I know certainly who participate in the flotilla, that Israel's actions in impeding us getting there this time would make us more determined than ever to try and go, and that there will be another attempt to go. Certainly the Irish ship will be seaworthy within the course of a month. The other ships are still good if they can be removed from a Greek port and potentially go from elsewhere. So I think there will be another attempt, but it needs to be discussed.
If I can just make a brief comment on that question you just raised. Well, yes, we've got all of these bans, but, this flotilla is for peaceful reasons. It's not going to go and clash with anybody by choice, but because the whole game has been shifted to Greece now, and we're talking about the behaviour of the Greek government and the stance of the Greek people, just let me come back to something I said last time round. As far as we're concerned, the Greeks, the sea means freedom, liberty. My colleague from France mentioned the port of Marseille. Can I just remind you that Marseille was actually created by Greeks from an area that was called Phokia. And look how odd things turn out, how strange history is. We know we've got a port now called New Phokia in Greece. And this boat, which was sabotaged, wants to go there, but they're not allowing it to leave from near Phokia, from New Phokia. It's a historic coincidence, basically. Anyway, as I was saying, sea for us means freedom. And we're struggling now to ensure that international law is respected. It's fair to all peoples. Luckily in Greece, we haven't heard this view that all of these efforts represent anti-Semitism. It's not got that far. But all we want the Greek government to do is respect international law and stand up on behalf of the Palestinian people and their rights. And I do hope that this will very quickly take shape once again, and that this flotilla will be able to become a reality. Thank you.
According to recent news that I've received, there are 2 boats that are still in international waters, a French ship and a Canadian ship. I've got very contradictory information about the French vessel, which is a small pleasure boat with a few militants aboard. And the Canadian vessel, I got some information concerning it this morning, saying that it was in international waters. So for the moment, there are still 2 boats that are trying to run the blockade. As far as the French boat is concerned, or we, the French elected representatives, are endeavouring to put pressure on the French authorities as much as possible to see to it that this boat will be respected, that its right to sail be respected. These are pacifist militants aboard the Dignité, which is the name of the second French boat. I know them all individually. Olivier Besançon and Coupé, terrible terrorists, but people who are known, and there are 8 of them. I hope that they will attain their objective, and it's a small pleasure vessel, so it can't really be suspected of transporting weapons, as is claimed with regard to the other vessels. I don't know whether it's been said, but all the boats of the flotilla underwent all the inspections of the that the authorities wanted to implement when they said that they were there to bring weapons or whatever. So we've still got these 2 boats that are in international waters, and we're waiting for news. For the moment, I don't have any more information than that.
Just one final point of good news, which is that apparently the US captain has been released just in the past hour or 2. So that's, well, it's good, but it's fairly limited good, because he shouldn't have been arrested in the first place, and obviously the Canadians remain under arrest. But it should give confidence in terms of trying to build a movement to allow the boats to sail.
Notre temps s'est déjà achevé, donc nos députés.
Our time is up. However, our members remain available. And in the next few days, a vote will be taken on what has happened. Thank you very much.